Welcome. This is our first lesson in our Premiere Pro for 2017 class, Weber State University. If you're stumbling across our video, then you don't have the footage that we're working with, but this will definitely build on the fundamentals of setting up a project in Premiere Pro. So if you know nothing about the program whatsoever, this will be a good one to follow. Before we do this, though, we need to organize the files that we just got onto our computers. So here is how I do that. If we go over to Finder, and I'm just going to expand this out, and my drive I call WD-Tubby because it's a terabyte and it was big. So TB for Tubby, I guess. It's not supposed to be offensive in any way, but so the way I usually build my hierarchy in my folder structure is I have my hard drive, and then inside my hard drive I will usually place a client folder, and then there's kind of like generic assets that I use over and over, like my own personal work. But then inside there, let's pretend that for sake of this class is called 2534. Well, there it used to be. It's actually called Web 2300. So let me go down to this Web 2300. Pretend that Web 2300 is your client at this point. So if you're going to use your hard drives for all your other classes, I would probably set up a folder for each class and keep all your files organized for each of your classes. So inside here, I've got these screen records, which I'm doing right now. This is last year's, but I'm going to create a new folder for every project that I do. So let's create a new folder. I right-clicked there and selected New Folder. I'm going to call this one Hallway Scene. Okay. And then inside that folder, there are several folders that I usually have. And depending on the size of the project, we might have a very robust file structure, very minimal one. This is a very small project. We just have a handful of video clips and that's it. So I'm going to use my key command, Command-Shift-N, to create another new folder since my hallway scene folder was highlighted. And I'm going to call this Assets. And then inside there, I'm going to create another new folder and call it Video. And then click out here, right-click on it, New Folder, and call this one Audio. Or, yeah, I'm just going to call it Audio and stick them all in here. If I were doing a much bigger project, I would probably subdivide my audio assets into voice, sound effects, and music. Okay, because there can be a lot there, and then video I could also subdivide into B-roll, and if I'm doing a documentary, I could do it interviews and B-roll, and aerial shots and cutaway shots if you wanted to organize it that way. Nice thing about video editors though is you can do that kind of organization within the editor. So this audio and video folder will be fine for this project. Now let's go back to the hallway scene, my main project folder for this, and I'm going to create a new folder, and this one I'm going to call it Project Files. With more robust projects where I'm going to be incorporating After Effects, Audition, Premiere, a lot of different software, with Project Files, I'll actually just call this Working. And then within the working folder, I would create a Premiere folder, an After Effects folder, and an Audition folder. So that's where my working files are kept. And then, because this is a very small project, all I need from here is Output. And this is where I would export my finished videos, and whichever formats. And you can subdivide this one into drafts, and then finals. And then with finals, once you have your final project, you can have the one that is like email quality, one that's YouTube quality, one that's archive quality, like really, really big file. And we'll get into that later. But for this assignment, I think this is good. One thing that I'll do for efficiency is I've built a template folder structure that I like and it's for like the biggest project I could possibly think of. And I just use that one whenever I'm creating a new project. So I could rename this master project template. Then if I wanted to create a new project right here, I could just grab this, hold down Option, see that little green plus that goes next to my mouse, release, and it'll create a duplicate of that folder. Then I can rename this one Hallway Project. Then all my folders are ready to go. And then yeah, to duplicate that, I just drag it down into this negative space, hold down Option or Alt to copy it. You could also just select it, hit Command C, and then make sure that this folder is selected again, and then paste it, and it'll make a copy. All right, I'm going to delete that. So I have my master project template, and then I can go back and work on this as I'm fine-tuning it. If I find that I keep making an extra folder, you know, like inside my output folder, I've got my previous drafts folder. I might want to hang on to previous drafts. If I find myself doing that a lot, then I can add it to my master project template. That way it's always there every time I create a new project. Now, you may be asking, why am I creating a new folder for every new project? And the reason for that is anytime I'm going to bring something into the project, I want to copy it into the folder inside that project folder. That way, if I ever need to move this hallway project to another computer, to another hard drive, archive it somewhere, the project files are going to reference those assets based on where the project file is. So if I move my hallway project, but I'm keeping my assets on my desktop, and I move it to another computer, you're going to email me and you're going to say, I tried opening it up at home, but all my files went missing. So that's why. It's so that no matter where this folder goes, all the assets, all the project files associated with this project go with it. And I take this even to each individual client. Like if your client has a logo and they use it in every single one of their projects, it doesn't matter how many times I'm reusing that logo, I will create another instance of that logo in the assets folder for every project that I make. That way that I'm never losing a file. Okay? All right. So that's just really, really good asset management practice to always keep all your assets in a folder together with the project files. Okay? So now that I've made these files, I need to put my assets in my video folder. So I'm going to open up a new window. And different people do this different ways. Some people like to, navigate through. I like dragging and dropping, so that's what I'm going to get ready for. So in this new window, I hit Command N to bring up a new window. So I'll go down to my WDTubby folder, or my drive, and I'll navigate to this other folder where I stuck all these assets. I captured them here. And in the H.264 folder, you probably have them on your downloads folder right now because you downloaded them from my Google Drive. Just select all of these MP4s, and you can either hit Command C to copy them, or drag and drop. I'm getting ahead. So Command C can copy them. You can navigate back to the video folder inside your project folder and hit Command V, and that'll paste them. but I actually want to move them over because I'm moving them within my same hard drive, and I don't want to create duplicate files. So I'm just going to do a drag and drop. Okay, so that'll probably take your computer about 2 minutes, depending on how fast your hard drive is, because it's about 2.5 gigs. All right, and we can take a look at these assets in a minute. This audio folder is going to come in handy because later on I'm going to download some music tracks for you to place in the project, but we're just getting this set up right now. All right, so let's get Premiere opening. So go ahead and go down to or open up Premiere however you want to. What's your guys' favorite ways to open up applications on your computer? Do you like to store all of them on in your dock? The ones I use the most I keep in my dock. I like to keep this applications icon in my dock also because then I can have quicker access. I know people who just are really, really good at moving their mouse up to the top right-hand corner of the screen and clicking on this and just typing in Premiere.
You can also use Command Space to reach that same screen.
And you can use Command Space to reach that same screen. So, Command Space, Premiere. After Effects, see? So we can get them all. All right. God, I love those keyboard tips, Command Space. I have a plugin in After Effects that competes with that, so I'm not in the habit of using it. All right, so does everybody see this window? Just a little review of last week. This is your welcome screen to Premiere Pro. You cannot have Premiere run without it having a project file open. Okay, so you either have a project open or Premiere closes. So if you, we can go to select the new project button over here. And then what this is, this name, this is the name of your project file. It may not be the name of your video, because let's say you're a vlogger and you do a weekly vlog and you are editing multiple vlogs together inside one Premiere project. That's what you're going to worry about, the name of your project. It's like August vlogs, or this client's series of webisodes, whatever it may be. This one, we're just doing the one video, so I'm going to go ahead and call this my first and last name, and I need this so that I know that it's yours when you send it to me. Hallway. And you can either call it hallway scene or hallway project, whatever you want. Then don't hit enter. Click on this browse. This is your save as dialog box. This is where the project file is actually going to save on your computer. Now here's a little tip. I'm going to get a little intermediate here right away. If you already have this project files folder available in a Finder window, if you drag that to your save as dialog box, it'll save you the time of having to navigate through all your folders to find that folder. So that's a little time saver. So when you're importing a file, you can do the same thing. Question?
And so just save this to the project files?
Say again?
So you should just save this to the project files folder?
Yeah, save it in the project files folder. And then click OK. And then Premiere will open up. This is the default workspace for the 2017 Premiere. So by default, my project window or my project panel is down here in the bottom left corner of the screen. My source window is in this panel. This is where if I double click on something in the project panel, it goes up here. My timeline panel is down here on the bottom right. This is where we do our editing. And then our program panel is up here on the top right-hand side of the screen. And that's where we watch our final project as we're cutting it together. So we need to get these files into Premiere. There are 3 different ways to do that. Does anybody remember from last week? There's drag and drop. So again, if you have your Finder window already available with your assets right here, you can just select these, drag and drop them down into the project panel. So what's the second way?
Import them.
I heard a double click, so if you double click in the negative space in your project panel, that'll bring up a import dialog box. And then the third one is the command for import, which is Command I. I'm not even going to bother showing you where it is in the menu because I don't want you going to the menu. It's slow. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Command I to bring up that dialog box. And I'm going to navigate to the hallway project folder. By default, it took me to my Premiere project folder. And I need to go to Assets, Video. Now, there are several different ways to bring in assets. Let's pretend I only want camera A. I'm holding down Command while I select each individual one. To select all of them, you can either click and drag down, kind of like you're drawing a box around the clips. That'll select all of them. You can hit Command A to select all of them. You can just do one at a time, double click on one of them, it'll close the dialog box, and that's the only thing you bring in. For inside Premiere Project Management, if I just select the video folder and click Import, it'll create a folder or a bin inside Premiere that will have all those video files inside it. This is taking a minute to process for some reason. It's probably because they're MP4s. I had to compress them to a format that would be friendly to PCs and Macs. All right. So there's that folder. So if I double click on that folder, I can see the icon in a thumbnail view, each of the clips that we imported. Looks like, oh yeah, okay, so we got all of them. All right, good. There's 2 different views. There's this thumbnail view that we can take a look at all these clips. There's also a list view if you like seeing things in list form. The list view also has all your metadata for your clips. And in Premiere, you can go in here and you can add notes, like you can add a description. You can add, all sorts of stuff. This project is not nearly big enough for all these options to be beneficial because we've only got this many clips. It's hardly any. So in this view, you can see this. You can see a little playhead. This little as I scrub my mouse across the top of it, I can see from the beginning of the clip is on the left side of the thumbnail. On the right of the clip is the end of the thumbnail. The end of the clip. So beginning, end, left to right. And you can see the corresponding frame as I'm going across here. You can also select one of them, and that'll make this little playhead bigger. And then I can click on that and drag it for more precise selection of the clip. All right, so let me close this window. And I'm going to go to my project panel and switch it to list view. This same icon that's in the bottom corner of the panel, that's list view. It's behind me, I'm in front of it, but I promise it's down there. Okay. Now if I twirl this arrow down, I can select any of these clips. If I double click on it, that'll bring the clip up into my source panel and I can preview it bigger, like a lot easier to see. Okay. So this is the footage we shot last week. All right. Paused video never really lands on a... All right, there we go. All right, so any of these clips, you can just double click on them and preview them in this source panel. So far, so good? All right, we kind of did this a little bit last week. All right, next thing we got to do is all the assets we have for the project are now in the project file. I'm going to hit Command S to save it just because that's really good practice. Just to constantly save. You don't want to be losing work. These programs have a tendency to crash. All right, so what we need to do is create a new sequence. You can have multiple sequences. The sequence is basically your video. It's where you build your clips together and form your movie, and then you export them from the sequence. So if I come down, sorry, if I come down here to my project panel and expand this video bin down, if I scroll to the right here just a little bit, and take a look at this. We have a frame rate of 23.976. That's fine. We have video information. We've got audio information. Inside this video information, inside these parentheses is aspect ratio. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the most important thing of all these settings is the frame rate. When you're creating a sequence, you want your sequence settings, ideally your sequence settings are going to be the same as the video settings that you shot.
How do you
Question?
switch that screen displays the frame?
How did I make it look like this? There's a little icon at the very, very bottom left corner of the screen.
Is it-
One of them is a thumbnail view and one of them is a list view.
So it's
Yeah, so I'm in list view right now. Ideally, your sequence settings are going to be the exact same as your video settings, because then when you bring your video into it, it'll play your video back normal because they match. So Premiere is sophisticated enough to know that we can't all, going into video editing for the first time, have every single setting of our clips memorized. And Premiere is also really good at taking different types of files and putting them together on the same timeline. But all these clips have the exact same settings. So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to right click on this clip 1 and I'm going to select, if it's going to do it. See, that's why I saved it. It's going to crash right now. Okay, it didn't crash. Right click on it and select New Sequence from Clip. And what that does is it creates a sequence that has all the identical settings of that clip. So it creates all those settings for us. We don't have to worry about it and have them all memorized, and we don't have to stress about getting any of them wrong. And what that did is it created this little icon right here. That is a sequence icon. This little icon next to clip number 1 has a little green waveform and a little purple film strip. That means there's audio and video on this asset. And as we start importing other assets, we'll see that some of them just have the purple film strip. Those are just video. Some of them just have the green waveform. That's audio. And others have a little picture icon because they're photos. All right. Or graphics of some sort. So just to keep pounding this like meticulous project organization thing into you, I'm going to rename my sequence Hallway Scene. And then to further organize this, I don't want this sequence to be in the video folder. I want it to be in the sequences folder. So I'm going to grab this little icon, drag it to the left until this little symbol goes away from the little fist, and then I'm going to let go, and that drops it outside that bin. Now, how do you create a new folder? Well, you can right-click in your project window, and then from this new item, or this new bin, bins are folders. So if you're ever like, I can't find the create new folder button, well, it's actually a bin. That's what they call them. I'm going to call this one sequences. And then drop my hallway scene sequence into that new folder or bin. Sorry. I have to remind myself sometimes.
I don't understand why they don't just call it a folder. They have to be
Yeah, I don't either, because in After Effects they go ahead and just call them folders. So, all right. So we have this clip on the timeline. For now, I'm going to just delete this clip because this isn't the first clip that I need. So I just selected it in my timeline. It turns it gray, and I hit delete, and it's gone.
But if you
It's
make
not
a-
gone from the project. It's just gone from the timeline. It's
if
still
you
in the
make a
project.
bin in your project, does that make the folder inside of the actual directory, or is it just a virtual folder in the project?
Yeah, this whole project window, or the project panel, that's all organization within the project.
Okay.
And to further answer your question, if I rename any of these clips here, if I highlight it,
Yeah.
rename it here,
It doesn't rename the real one.
it doesn't rename it on your computer. It just renames it here. So if you want to organize these clips, you can actually add a description as the file name, medium shot, camera A, and do that without messing up your file naming on your
Weird.
hard drive. Okay? You say that's weird?
It's kind of a good thing but a bad thing at the same time.
Well, it's a good thing for me. I would prefer you not rename any of these files, because if you rename the files on your computer, send me your project file, and I've got different named video files.
Then you don't mess it up.
Project's not going to know what they are.
Because we're not going to send you the source clips, we're only going to send you the project.
Yep, all you're sending me is the project file, because I have the video.
That's
right
a
here.
pretty smart idea, actually.
Well, it's nice because you can, not to get into proxy editing, but you can collaborate on project files. If you all have the same assets, you can just toss your project files back and forth and work on them
kinda-
remotely.
Well, technically, what you could do is just have a shared Dropbox or Google Drive folder, and then just edit it from that, and it would update it to everyone else's.
Exactly. That's how I work every day. Actually, I'm working with people every day using a synced Dropbox folder, and
That's pretty impressive. What
and
I
I
do
just
for-
send a text message and I say, can you save this file so I can do some quick renders from it, and then they save it, and I see my Dropbox folder tab say you updated this file. I open it up with all their changes, do my work, save it, close it, and then they can pick it
that's
back
so
up.
cool.
So
Yeah, I don't use my laptop for anything but actually coming to class.
all right. Okay, so I have this empty timeline and I have all these clips. So let's talk about creating in and out points, because when we said roll camera, we had some discussion that happened, and then we called action, and then there was all the acting, and then the leaving, and then cut, and all that stuff. We don't need all that stuff from every clip, right? We only need pieces of them. So rather save ourselves from cluttering up our timeline with every frame of footage that we've got, I'm going to go down to this PXW, not this one, PXW 0712. And I could call this one, I could just rename this exterior 1 if I wanted to.
0712.
Yeah.
Where are we?
So I double clicked on this to bring this up in my preview or my source panel. The key command for play and stop, does anybody remember what that is?
Spacebar.
Spacebar. So if I double click on a file down here, do you see this blue box automatically go around my source panel? That means my source panel is assuming that's where you're going to want to be next if you double click on it here. So that highlights, and then all I have to do is hit spacebar and it'll start playing. And we got a nice little bogey in the background. Free extra. All right, so this blue little diamond shape, that's our playhead. You'll see one over here, playhead right here. There's also a playhead right here, and they correspond to time. So beginning of the clip is always at the left, end of the clip is always at the right. So I can scrub along and take a look at this, but I don't need to see how many seconds do we have here. Almost 3 full seconds of empty sidewalk before he enters the frame, right? So what I mean by setting an endpoint is we need to say, I want the beginning of this clip to start right here where the playhead is. The key command for endpoint, setting an endpoint, is I for in. All right, and now if I hit my space bar, I can look for the part where I want this to end, and maybe right there. Okay, so I'm going to hit O for out, and take a look at these little brackets. So I got this gray area now. That's my area of interest for this clip, with the out point over here and the in point over here. And as you can see, I'm moving my mouse over it and it's turning into brackets. I can adjust that in point and out point. And if I click on it and start dragging it, it'll show me the new out frame. Okay. So from here, I can click on this thumb on the video itself, just anywhere on the video, click on it and start grabbing. See, it turns into a little fist. That means I've got it in my hand. I'm dragging it down here, and I can drop it on the timeline right here. Okay. So what I had the option of doing was dropping it anywhere I wanted. These are tracks, and we'll get into these tracks in just a second. But drag it down so that they're right next to each other, and then let go. Now that it's on the timeline, see where my playhead is? My playhead's at the beginning of the timeline, but my clip is not. So wherever this vertical line is touching, if it's not touching this clip, it's not going to show up over here in the program panel. So I need to move that. Just click on it and drag it to the left until it's at the beginning. And now it'll show up in my program. All right, so let's go to the next clip in our project. I kind of shot these clips in order on purpose. So it's PXW0713. So I'm going to double click on that. And what I need to do is find the point where I want, oh, that's a junk clip. That's nothing.
Why did you name them those names?
That's what the camera is naming them.
Oh,
I've got my camera, the PXW means I shot it on my PXW 200.
Yeah. So
So
what is the number?
I've shot, since I last set the camera to that, I've shot 714 clips with the camera.
Okay.
So it just keeps a sequential number
But
ordering.
as long as we don't edit the actual file, we can edit the name inside the project,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. The reason why you can do all this editing in Premiere without affecting the files on your computer is Premiere is a non-destructive,
It just uses
non-linear
metadata,
editor.
essentially.
Yeah, it just keeps track of
And then
the files
when
it's
when
referencing.
when it renders it, it puts it into a cache.
No, when it
Like as you're editing, I mean,
as you're editing, yeah, it'll
it's
stick renders into a
it's
cache.
rendering it into a cache, and then when you finalize it, exports to whatever you want.
Yeah, and when you export it, it creates a new video file, and it doesn't harm your original footage ever. All right, so let's set another endpoint. Let's click on this here, and I'm going to, right after he does his little shrug here, before he tilts his head down, I am going to hit I for my endpoint, and then I'm going to scrub along here till we have sufficient space to establish that we're in Elizabeth Hall. So I'm going to hit O for my out point right there, somewhere around there. And now I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to butt this up right against this other clip. All right, now this is what's called very, very rough cut. So if I go down to my timeline and take a look at this, let's see if this cut looks any good. So he walks up. Okay, did that look natural? Why? Why? What was wrong with it? I thought it looked perfect.
Just done with the shrug.
Okay, so he did a shrug.
Sort of repeated a little bit.
Yeah, and then he looked down, started walking up, and then we cut to behind him, not walking up. Then he looks down and he walks up again. So there's repeated action, right? So he does the same thing twice. Means we've got too much footage on one of these. So let's get a closer look at these two clips so we can make sure we get a better intersection point. With my playhead right here, I'm going to hit plus next to the delete key. It's risky, I know. But if I hit plus a couple of times, then I can expand my view, get a closer view of this intersection, so I can fine tune this. Now, without using any of our tools, here's what we can do with the selection tool. And the more you get familiar with your tools, the faster of an editor you'll be. But let's start with just trimming these clips. Question is, do we want to let him start walking up in this clip? Or do we want him to start walking up in this clip? This one? Okay. So what should we use as our motivation to cut from one shot to the other?
I'm walking around the pole.
Walking around the pole? Okay, let's go with that. So he's walking up here. Let's trim this clip. If I go to the right side of this clip now, because it's selected, if I go to the right side of this clip, it turns into a red bracket with a left arrow, which means I'm trimming that one. Okay, because it's like a hand grabbing that side. If I move to my mouse to the right just a little bit, it's a hand grabbing the other clip on that side.
And we
Okay.
switch back to the grabber from the cutter.
You want to get your selection tool, which the key command is V for your
Okay.
selection tool,
Okay.
or it's this arrow one right here. And see, I moused over the selection tool in parentheses. It says V, so that's how you teach yourself that one. All right, so I'm going to click on this and pull it back, but it leaves this gaping hole right here. So I need to grab this clip and pull it to the left so that they snap together like that. Now let's see how they look. Not very good, right? All right, so I need to get more of this clip back. So I'm going to push it back to the right and find the place where he's walking around that pole. So how did that look? I'm hitting home to put my playhead back at the beginning every time, by the way. Instead of, I see people all the time, I'm like, okay, go back to the beginning, and they grab their playhead and they like push it back to the beginning. It's a waste of energy.
How did
Question.
you get it to go to like? How did you cut it to go up?
Sorry?
How did you get the blue to shrink?
I just keep watching it. I'll answer your question because I'm going to do this in a different way.
Yeah, I'm just trying.
So how did that look? I don't feel like I want to use this because he's doing something. He's shrugging, but I'm missing what's happening on his face. I don't know what's the emotion. I can see he's sighing, but I'm missing the emotion in his face. So I'm going to undo a whole bunch of times. Okay, let's go back here. Now this will answer your question, okay, Nick?
Okay.
All right, so I have this clip here where he sighs. I'm just going slowly because I want to find a place to do this cut. He looks down, which is a good motivation to start walking forward, right? So right here, maybe this is the frame that I want to do this cut on. So to trim this back, I grab the right side of this clip with my mouse, click on it, and pull it to the left, and it'll snap to my playhead. Now what I want to do is find that frame in the second clip where his head's down and he's about to start walking forward. And if I trim this to the right by grabbing the left-hand side of the clip and let go, then hopefully when I grab this second clip and pull it to the left to match up with the other, and I go back to the beginning, hit home, my computer's struggling to keep up here. Let's see how this looks. Okay, how did that look? All right, okay, so we used some action to cut on. It's called cutting on the action. It's a very technical, precise term, cutting on the action. All right, so next cut will be him inside somewhere. So let's take a look at the next clip. Actually, do you feel pretty good about setting your in and out points using the source panel right now? You can I, O, in, out, so that's pretty good. Let's switch to our icon view and take a look at our video clips in our thumbnail view. Because we just saw this clip of him going in the building. Next shot I want to do will be this walking up the stairwell shot. So if I use this little playhead inside the thumbnail view, I can put this right here and then hit I, set an in point. See, it changes this little blue bar, and I can scrub this along till he's up to about right there, and then hit O, and that set another in and out point for that clip. And I can drag it directly from this thumbnail view into my timeline, and I've got another clip on the timeline. Gotta love walking upstairs shots. All right, the next shot I have is this shot of him walking past the camera down the hallway. So I barely hit record in time, so I'm going to go ahead and use the beginning of this clip, and then I'll see that little bit right there where I'm standing up before I hit stop on the camera. Let's just hit O right before I do that with the camera. Drag that down to the timeline.
Which one is this? Which one?
Well, I'm looking at him in my thumbnail view. So after I actually shot it in order, so I went 713, 714, 715, 716 in order on the timeline. Made it easy for you. Okay, so those 4 shots were shot in an order. There's no sound on these, so don't worry if you're not hearing anything. I'm just watching these back to make sure I like it. Okay, great. Love it. All right. Any questions so far? Okay, let's put the next shot we want to put on. Let's do clip number 6. Clip 0006 MP4. This is 47 seconds long. Let's start by just chucking this whole thing down on the timeline. Okay? Now we're going to start getting into some tools. Since I have this entire clip down on the timeline, I don't need all of it, but I maybe want some of it. Normally, I would come along and, well, listen to this.
Are you rolling? Okay. Action.
We don't want any of that, right?
Oh, hey,
Hey, Emily.
Caleb, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Let's maybe get this clip right before. Now, a more efficient way to cut this would be to what do I want to teach you first? I'm going to teach you how to use the razor blade first rather than a ripple edit, because a ripple edit would be the most efficient, but you need to learn how to use the razor blade. Your razor blade is over here. Tell me what the key command is for the razor blade. C. By the, as you know, mentioned to us by that C next to it in parentheses. So the razor blade is your cut. So it's C for cut. That's how you remember that one. Your selection tool is V, because selection tools look like a sideways V, little arrow. And then with this highlighted clip selected, I can hit delete. Then instead of grabbing this clip and pulling it this way, I can select this black space in between these two clips, hit delete again, and then it'll suck that space together and make them touch. Okay, so that's a more efficient way. Before I was using my selection tool, selecting it, pulling it to the left until it snapped.
What do you do to make it snap?
You can turn snapping on and off by clicking on this little magnet icon,
Oh, nice.
or what's the key command to turn snapping on and off? Do you see it?
S.
S.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Sometimes snapping can be really annoying. Most of the time, it's very helpful. So instead of dragging this to the left and butting it up against that other clip, I can select this little black space in between them, hit delete again, and it'll delete that black space. So a handy little tip there. All right, so let's go back just one clip and look at the timing. And he's walking along, and
Oh,
oh,
Hey.
hey, nice. All right, we have an audio issue. We'll get into that later. Let me just play this back, and you tell me what's going on with the audio.
Emily.
Caleb, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, how you been?
Pretty good, how about you?
Oh, I've been.
Okay, what did you guys hear? What's happening?
Isn't
She's
it,
really,
it's overblown.
Well, it's overblown, but that's the system in here. That's not actually overblown.
Mics are different volumes.
The mics are slightly different volumes, so she sounds louder than he does. Also, we've got her coming out of this speaker and him coming out of that speaker, and we need them to be both coming out of both speakers. So we'll take care of that later. That's a totally different lesson. Next thing I want to do is just from this shot, this shot right here, we can see that they've run into each other. Have we seen enough of this, or do you want to keep watching it more? Let me play it back again. You can tell me when we've had enough of it.
oh, hey,
Hey, Emily.
Caleb, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, how you been?
Pretty good, how about you?
Oh, I've been. Are you still dating what's his name?
Yeah, kinda.
Oh wow. Jeez, look at that. Did you get that last night?
Actually, about a year ago.
I got enough of that clip a long time ago. Nobody told me to cut.
Oh, I thought we were just watching.
Okay, tell me when you've seen enough of it.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
Cut.
Caleb.
Okay, good. That's a much better place. Back there. Okay, so I'm gonna hit C to cut. Okay, so this is just a rough place here. Then V to select this clip and delete it. Now let's find the next shot we want to cut to, which I'm just gonna scrub along through these thumbnails see which one I might want. Maybe this one, because it's a little bit closer. Let me play this. Let me select it and play it for a second. Oh, by the way, you can play these clips in the thumbnail view too. It's pretty nice. So if you're just kind of like browsing around and you don't want to have to open everything up in the source panel, you can be a little bit more efficient by getting a general idea from your thumbnail view.
Caitlin, right?
Okay, so let's try this. Oh, okay. Here's my next little tip for setting in and out points. Place your index finger on J, your middle finger on K, and your ring finger on L. That's J is to play backward, K is to stop and play, and L is to play forward. So let's just try it for a second. If I hit L, it'll play it forward. Left will play it backward. And it sounds funny and everything, but what's right above your middle and your ring finger? I and O, right? So watch this like playing a video game. I hit J to play it backward. I hit I as I'm playing, and it sets an in point.
Yeah, pretty good. How about you?
Okay, so he asks her a question, which means she's going to answer, right? So after his question, that's when I'm going to cut. I just hit my I and O as it was playing with my thumb on spacebar. I hit spacebar and stopped it. So I've got an in and out point set for this clip. I'm going to drag it down here. And now I'm going to zoom in here a little bit closer, fine tune this. I hope I can do a J cut here because that's the last thing I need to show you.
Oh, hey.
Hey, Emily.
Kip. Oh, hey.
Emily.
Caitlin, right? Yeah.
Oh, we got sound sync issues here. Okay. Clip 5.
Isn't all the audio is separate anyways?
It was recorded. It was recorded on that recorder. The audio and the video went into that recorder, but I got a sync issue apparently. I think the recorder's compensating for a delay on the HDMI cable. All right, so let's zoom in on this a little bit and find a better place for this cut to happen. So he goes,
Oh, hey.
Hey, Emily.
Kip. Oh, hey.
Emily.
so let's go right after he says Emily and use our C, cut that right there, select V, and then let's find this little Emily in here also. Now, let me show you something for editing with this these audio waveforms, which is going to throw us off because this is out of sync. If I go down to my timeline panel, I have video 1, audio 1, all these tracks and stuff. They're all blue, which means they're ready to receive audio and video. So if I drop stuff into the timeline, it'll drop the audio and the video. If I turn all these off for the audio, it won't put anything down when I drag it down. But I can expand the audio by putting my mouse in between these two tracks. See how it turns into the brackets with the up and down arrows? If I pull that down, I can see these waveforms bigger. And I think he's the one on the bottom.
Emily.
Caitlin, right?
No, she's the one on the bottom. So you can see right here, he's saying Emily. Okay. So what I want to do is right after he says Emily,
Hey, Emily.
Kip.
right before she says Caleb, if I zoom in even farther, I can find the frame right before she starts talking, and I can trim her clip back by clicking on the right side of that and pulling it to the left. Okay, so now this shot of the two of them, wide head to foot, will end right after he's done saying Emily. And this shot, I think, is beginning right after he says Emily. There. Put them together, see how it looks.
Oh, hey.
Hey, Emily.
Caitlin, right? Yeah.
All right, excellent. What do you guys think of that little intersection?
Oh, hey.
Hey, Kelly,
You look great. Yeah. Yeah.
how you been?
All right, so yeah, we have audio syncing issues there. Let me see if the shop B has audio syncing issues too.
Wow, geez. You get that last night or?
A year ago, actually. Yeah, it's been a little while.
Oh yeah, they're both off. All right. Question?
How did you get the J?
I haven't done a J cut yet. Although we can get into J cuts, there hasn't been a real good opportunity for a J cut yet.
I was just kind of following that.
Yeah, it's a requirement for the first assignment, but I'm not going to make it. I'm going to take that off because we haven't really had a good opportunity for that. And if you guys want to, you can continue to edit your scene beyond this, but this is where I want you to get to for turning in your hallway projects next week. Okay? So, any questions up to this point? This lecture's 56 minutes. All right. Since there are no questions, we'll go ahead and have our off lecture discussion about it.
Could I submit